HOA Karen threatened me with jail. I owned the prison contract. It all started on an ordinary morning when I walked out my home, sipping my coffee, thinking about the busy day ahead. The sun was bright. The air was calm, and I had no idea that the peace in my neighborhood was about to break in the most unexpected way. I had lived in this neighborhood for years, and I knew how the HOA loved to control everything. They wanted to decide what color people painted their houses, how tall the grass could grow, and even which flowers belonged in the front yard. But I never thought things would go this far. That morning, I heard the sharp voice of a woman who had become the nightmare of our entire street. Her name was Karen, and she was a self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. She wasn't just nosy, she was ruthless, and she believed that everyone must obey her every command. Karen marched across the street with her usual dramatic walk. She waved a stack of papers in her hand like they were holy documents that gave her power over everyone. "You're in violation again," she barked before I could even say good morning. I blinked, confused, because I hadn't done anything wrong. My lawn was cut, my trash cans were in place, and my house was freshly painted. But Karen thrived on making trouble. She slapped the papers against my chest. "You didn't file for permission before you put up those holiday lights," she snapped. I looked at the small string of lights hanging on my porch, simple white bulbs that gave my home a warm glow at night. "These?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "They're just lights, Karen." Her face turned red, and her voice grew louder. "Rules are rules. You've broken HOA regulations, and now you'll face the consequences." She leaned closer, lowering her voice into a hiss. "If you don't take them down, I'll make sure you end up in jail." For a moment, I almost laughed. Jail? Over lights? It sounded ridiculous. But Karen wasn't joking. Her eyes were sharp. Her tone was filled with venom, and she genuinely believed she could throw me behind bars for hanging a few light bulbs. I took a deep breath, tried to stay calm. "Karen," I said slowly, "you don't have the power to put anyone in jail. That's not how this works." But she smirked, crossing her arms. "You don't know what I can do. I have connections. I'll make a call, and you'll be wearing an orange jumpsuit before the week is over." At that moment, I realized something. Karen didn't just want power. She wanted fear. She wanted everyone in the neighborhood to believe she was untouchable. But what she didn't know was that she had picked the wrong person to threaten. Because while she believed she could control me with fear of prison, the truth was much darker, much more ironic. You see, I owned the prison contract. Yes, the same jail she threatened to throw me into was actually under my company's control. I was the one who supplied the prison with everything from food to security systems. If she thought she could scare me with the threat of jail, she was about to learn a painful lesson. Still, in that moment, I didn't reveal anything. I wanted to see just how far Karen would push her game. She loved the spotlight, and she loved to humiliate people. So I simply nodded and said, "We'll see." That answer seemed to fuel her ego even more. She smirked, spun on her heels, and stormed off, already telling a neighbor how she was handling the criminal on the block. The rest of that day, I thought about her threat. Part of me was angry. How could someone misuse a community role to bully others? How could she twist the HOA's purpose into her personal kingdom? But another part of me was amused. Because while Karen thought she held all the cards, she had no idea she was standing in front of the dealer. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at those same white lights she hated so much. To me, they weren't just bulbs. They were a symbol of how little control Karen actually had. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about me. She had threatened families before. She had yelled at kids for playing basketball in their driveway. She had sent letters demanding people remove their garden gnomes, repaint their fences, or even cut down trees they had planted years ago. She ruled by intimidation, and the whole neighborhood was tired of her. But now, she had crossed the line. She had threatened me with jail. And if there's one thing I don't tolerate, it's empty threats. The next morning, Karen returned, this time with an even bigger audience. She stood in the middle of the street, shouting about how I was a disgrace to the neighborhood. She told everyone that I was one step away from being locked up. Some neighbors looked uncomfortable, Others rolled their eyes, but no one dared confront her. That was her power. Fear. I let her rant for a few minutes, sipping my coffee in silence. Finally, I stood up, walked to the edge of my driveway, and looked her straight in the eye. "Karen," I said firmly, "you think you can threaten me with jail, but let me tell you something. The jail you're talking about, the place you think you can send me to, I own the contract for it. Every cell, every guard, every lock. You're talking about my business." The crowd went silent. Karen blinked, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. For the first time, she didn't have a quick comeback. Her power, her threats, her arrogance, all of it cracked in that moment. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "You can't scare me, Karen. You've been bullying people for too long, but your threats end here. You wanted me in jail? Fine. But just remember, if I walk through those gates, it'll be on my terms, not yours." Her face went pale. She stuttered something about misunderstanding and just enforcing rules. But the damage was done. Everyone saw it. The queen of the HOA had been dethroned, and the irony of it all was too sweet. But this was just the beginning. Because once someone like Karen feels their power slipping, they don't give up quietly. They fight harder. They scheme deeper, and they claw at every chance to get back control. And I knew, without a doubt, that Karen wasn't finished with me yet. She had threatened me with jail. But now the game had changed, and I was ready for her. After that morning showdown, things in the neighborhood changed. For the first time, people saw Karen lose her balance. The look on her face when I revealed the truth about the prison contract was priceless, but I knew that moment would not be the end. Karen was the type who never backed down. She lived on drama. She needed to feel powerful, and now that I had embarrassed her, she was going to come at me harder than ever. For a couple of days, the street felt calm. Neighbors actually came up to me quietly, thanking me for standing up to her. One older couple whispered, "We've been scaring her for years. She finds us for every little thing. You're the first person who made her stop talking." Others gave me a nod of respect as they walked by. It felt good to know I wasn't alone. Karen had been terrorizing everyone, and people were tired of it. But calm never lasts long when Karen is involved. One evening, just as the sun was setting, I saw her walking up my driveway again. She had her arms crossed, her jaw tight, and I knew this wasn't going to be friendly. "So, you think you can humiliate me in front of everyone?" she snapped. "You think owning some silly contract makes you untouchable?" I set my coffee cup down and met her glare. "I don't think I'm untouchable. I just know you can't threaten me with something that belongs to me." Her lips curled into a smirk. "We'll see about that." The next morning, I woke up to find 3 violation notices taped to my door. One said my mailbox was the wrong shade of gray. Another claimed my driveway had minor cracks that needed immediate repair. The third accused me of breaking noise rules, even though I hadn't hosted anyone in weeks. It was clear what this was: revenge. Karen was using every ounce of her HOA power to bury me in fines and threats. Instead of panicking, I smiled, because while Karen thought she was playing chess, she didn't realize I had already seen the whole board. I kept the violation notices, but I didn't respond. That silence drove her crazy. A few days later, she knocked on my door with a smug look on her face. "You think ignoring these fines will make them disappear?" she asked. "It won't. If you don't pay, I'll escalate. You know what that means." I leaned against the doorframe, calm as ever. "More empty threats? Karen, you've been playing this game for years. You scare people into doing what you want. But not me. You want to escalate? Go ahead. Let's see how far you can push this." Her face turned red, and for a moment I thought she might scream. But instead, she smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. "Fine. You want war? You've got it." From that moment, things escalated fast. Karen started sending letters not just to me, but to everyone in the neighborhood, claiming I was a problem resident who was destroying the peace. She spread rumors that I was a criminal, that I had a record, that I was hiding something. She even told people I was dangerous, hoping they would turn against me. But the irony was, the more she attacked me, the more people rallied behind me. Neighbors started standing up to her, little by little. Someone down the street put up extra decorations on their lawn just to annoy her. Another family painted their fence bright blue, ignoring her demands. It was like the entire neighborhood had been waiting for someone to break the spell she had cast, and now they felt brave enough to join the rebellion. Karen, of course, hated it. She doubled down. One afternoon, I found her standing in my yard with a tape measure, writing down violations. I walked outside, shaking my head. Karen, you can measure all you want, but none of this will stick. You can't throw me in jail. And if you want to fight, just remember, you're the one who picked this battle. She snapped her tape measure shut. You don't scare me, she hissed. I smiled. Good, because I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to stop you from scaring everyone else. That night, I started planning. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I was tired of watching my neighbors live in fear. Karen had turned the HOA into her personal empire, and it was time to bring her reign to an end. I began by gathering every letter, every fine, every ridiculous demand she had ever sent me. I spoke with neighbors and collected their stories, too. The family who had been fined for letting their kids draw with chalk on the sidewalk. The widow who had been forced to remove her flower bed because it was too bright. The couple who had been threatened with eviction over a treehouse. Piece by piece, I built a case. One weekend, I invited a few neighbors to my backyard. We sat around the table, papers spread out in front of us, and for the first time, people felt hope. She can't keep doing this, one man said. We've been letting her get away with it for too long. I nodded. She thinks she can bully us, but the truth is, she's breaking rules herself. HOA presidents have power, but not unlimited power. She's abusing her position, and together, we can stop her. The energy in that meeting was electric. People who had once been silent now spoke with passion. They wanted change. They wanted freedom from Karen's tyranny. And I knew this was the start of something bigger than just me versus her. This was the beginning of a neighborhood revolution. Of course, Karen didn't know any of this was happening. She was too busy plotting her next move. She left another note on my door, this time demanding that I remove my lights or face immediate legal action. I laughed when I read it. Lights? Legal action? Over and over, she proved my point. She thrived on fear, but her threats were empty. I wrote a simple reply and slid it under her door. It said, Karen, you can threaten me all you want, but I don't live in fear. I own the contract to the place you want to send me. You can't touch me, and soon you won't be able to touch anyone else either. That single note drove her wild. The next day, she stormed across the neighborhood screaming about disrespect and lawsuits. But this time, fewer people listened. Some even laughed. For the first time, her power was slipping. And as I watched her unravel, I realized something important. It wasn't just about Karen. It was about every person who has ever used fear to control others. Bullies exist everywhere, in schools, in workplaces, in families, in communities. And the only way to stop them is to stand up, even when it's hard, even when it feels risky. Karen thought she could put me in jail, but instead, she had freed a neighborhood. The story wasn't over yet. There were still battles ahead, still games to be played, still secrets to be revealed. But one thing was clear. The days of living under Karen's rule were numbered, and I was going to make sure of it. So if you've ever faced someone like Karen, someone who thrives on fear, someone who abuses their power, remember this. You don't have to let them win. Stand your ground. Speak the truth. And never forget that sometimes the people who threaten the loudest are the ones who are most afraid. Because in the end, power built on fear always crumbles. And when it does, freedom takes its place. So don't just listen to this story. Learn from it. Share it. And if you're watching right now, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever dealt with a Karen in your life? How did you handle it? Your story could inspire someone else to finally stand up.